Hello everybody, I'm Gwen Campbell-Mindes. Welcome to my post, which is a day late because I actually didn't even have this recorded yesterday. So, yeah. Also, this is the, 9th year anniversary post because it has been 9 years since I started this, and oh my god, I've managed to collect a whole 500 subscribers in 9 years. Take that, somebody who hasn't managed to get that many subscribers in 9 years, which is like, it's a fair number of people, but most of them aren't actually actively posting anything. Anyways, thank you to everybody, by the way, who tipped me over the scales into 500 subscribers. I should have done a video for that too, but work has been a deal lately. Anyways, neither here nor there. So, as this is my annual post, I will be, as I talk annually, discussing something that is book adjacent, which is sort of the thing, for anybody here who hasn't looked at the last anniversary posts. Basically, this is for stuff that is connected to books, or for stuff that are things that are kind of like books. And in this particular case, I'm going to be talking about programs. More specifically, of course, programs for theatrical productions. I, by the way, am not the kind of person to collect programs. I'm not a souvenirs person, but I still have this many years later, and I don't actually know why, but I do. The Needfire was a performance that came out in the wake of Riverdance, following that Michael Flatley's Lord of the Dance, which he had done because he felt like Riverdance didn't highlight Irish dancing enough, and he wanted to do something that was just all about the Irish dancing, rather than something that had singers and tap dancers and a flamenco dancer and Russian folk ballet dancers. And anyway, so he put out Lord of the Dance, and then there was a vogue for a while of Celtic music extravaganza shows roughly in the idiom of Riverdance. Needfire was Canada's answer to that, and I saw that show. This was, of course, a show that came out in 1998. So it's been more than 25 years since this show was out. I, by the way, have the soundtrack, which I frankly think is great if you like this kind of thing. I mean, if you don't like Celtic folk music stuff, then obviously you're not going to like it. Anyways, the reason I wanted to talk about programs in particular has to do with a trend that I have noticed in programs, but in particular, of course, in ballet programs, which we will be getting to later. But let's talk about this, because programs back in the day were meant to be a whole bunch of things. They were meant to be souvenirs, something that you could bring home with you from the performance, and you'd be able to look at it and say, oh yeah, that was the guy who played that role. Ooh, he was good in that role. Or, who was it that was the lead violinist in the orchestra? I can look that up because I have this thing that I brought home with me that I can look these things up. They were also, and you see, you look at this and you can see there's a table of contents. That's because a program was a little booklet. It was an actual thing that had different pages. You'll notice there are a lot of pages here. You'll notice page 46 is Princess of Wales Theatre Information. There's a lot of pages in this thing. And I mean, okay, no, there aren't so many pages that, like, it's an infinitely huge thing, and 46 is the last page, but 46 is a decent chunk of stuff. Now, a lot of this was advertising, because, of course, advertising is how a lot of things make money. That's how you fund producing these programs, is you sell advertising, and then advertisers help you pay back the cost of printing this up and sourcing everything. But they are also... The thing about programs, though, was that you also had articles in them, and they were often articles that did not in fact directly connect to the performance. In this case, what you have to understand is the Royal Alexandra Theatre and the other theatres, these Mirvish, are owned by the Mirvish family, and the Mirvish family came to prominence in Toronto for this lovely landmark that you are seeing, the black and white photo above, which is no longer there, much to my dismay, because frankly, that had been there forever at the corner of Bathurst and Bloor, and it coming down was kind of a wrench because Honest Ed's was a massive landmark. So, this is a photograph of a piece of history. Anyways, but because the theater that this took place at, and I believe that, yes, this was the Princess of Wales Theatre, is a Mirvish theatre, and it remains a Mirvish theatre, even if Honest Ed Mirvish is dead now, because he was 80 back in 98. This was not a young man. But Honest Ed's, they have an article in here about the history of Honest Ed's, 50 years. Those light-up signs with their terrible, terrible puns. Squirrels love Honest Ed's. Why? Because he's nuts. This was a thing, and you would have articles like this because people need something to do in the last couple minutes before the lights go down before the show. It's nice to have something to read during the intermission if you don't have anybody to talk to, or if your friend has gone off to the bathroom. And back in 1998, most of us didn't have cell phones, and the cell phones that we had certainly didn't have the internet browsing capabilities we do now, which meant having a program was a valuable thing because it gave you something to do while you were waiting. And so I still have this. I still have this fond memory of Honest Ed's that is in the program. And now we get to the meat of the program, where we see here, we have the cast listing, principal dancers, the musicians in it. And by the way, this was a show with some top tier Celtic East Coast singers from Canada. The Ennis sisters were, charting musicians. Mary Jane Lamont was a charting musician. Denny Doherty was part of the Mamas and the Papas, which were massively charting 1960s folk musicians. And I've never liked John McDermott, but I cannot deny that he's a big deal. I don't like him, but he's still a big deal. So you have that. You have, of course, all the information about who the choreographers were, who did the lighting, the person who wrote the book, because the Needfire was a whole story and an exploration of past and cultural history and whatnot, with Denny Doherty as kind of the narrator of the whole piece. So you have this information, but more than that, you have, of course, these little blurbs about the dancers and their histories and where they come from, and I don't like Xavier Corcoran, specifically because this was a Celtic dance extravaganza, and they call him Scottish dancer, and he was not a Scottish dancer. He was doing ballet in a kilt. Now, there's nothing wrong with ballet in a kilt. La Sylphide has a long and trusty tradition of men doing ballet in kilts. But, and this is a big but, that is not a Celtic dance extravaganza, and if you're going to have a Celtic dance extravaganza, I expect you to be doing Scottish Highland flinging and not ballet. And I remain fully aggravated by this whole thing, because I don't care how good a dancer he is, or was at the time. It's been more than 20 years, and he probably isn't dancing anymore because, well, he would be too old for the job at this point. But, this thing, it brings back memories, and it's the thing about having a program like this is you can look through it and it reminds you of all of this stuff. So you have that, and then you have the National Ballet of Canada. And this is a program from just last year. And it sort of seems like it's the same. It sort of seems like it's going to be doing the same thing. You can see the photograph on the cover, something to represent the show, and because this is a ballet, you have ballet dancers rather than Needfire, which has the fire on the cover because it's kind of a more abstract idea. Fine. But here's the thing. That particular program this isn't a long program. This is, in fact, a program that has basically 10 pages. And it has several of those pages are taken up with page ads. They're taken up with requests for donations. And you don't have multiple articles with multiple pages. You have single half-page articles. And what you have instead, at the bottom right-hand corner of the page when you open it, is a QR code which has a link to the program. Here's the thing about a QR code with a link to a program. Eventually, that QR code is going to become defunct and that page is going to be gone. You don't get to keep that program with you. You don't get to take that home and say, oh yes, I remember all the things that happened. Here's all of the dancer bios from the people who were in that ballet. Ballet programs used to have a full set of dancer bios. They had, they had them for basically all of the principal dancers, for the first soloists, for the second soloists. You had the full run of bios for those. You would have multiple articles. You would have, all of these things, and they're not making them anymore. And on the one hand, I get it. It's a large expenditure. A lot of people take one and then they just leave it behind. I myself am guilty of that. And of course, everybody has their cell phone, so why not just do that? But it's the thing about hitting the QR code is it takes you to a web page, and the web page doesn't have the same organizing principle. It doesn't have the ability for you to just sort of flip back quickly in the thing in front of you. And it encourages people to do something that they are actively supposed to be discouraged from doing, and that is having their phones out and open right up to the second the performance starts. You are supposed to turn your phone off during live performances so that you don't bother the performers and disrupt the performance. And instead, you've put the QR code there, which actively encourages people to do this. It's not really a positive thing. And so I miss programs that had stuff in them, that talked about the performance, that talked about the dancers, that talked about the actors, that talked about the musicians, that had all of this information in it. And you had something to read while you were waiting for the show to start. I mean, yes, you could always bring a book with you, I grant. But my point is, I think that it's encouraging something that is not very good behavior, and I really, really dislike the thing. I mean, I've checked out these websites that the QR code bounces you to, and it doesn't feel like a program. It feels like you have to go to the website, and if you want to look up dancers' bios, well, you dig through the website to find where the dancer bios are. And if you want to find and that's not a program. The program is supposed to have all of that information in one place, convenient and easily accessible, and that's not this QR code. So yeah, that's what I have to say. My grouchy rant of somebody who is feeling way, way older than I actually am. And yeah, I will hopefully manage to make my usual Thursday appearance when I see you all next week.